very clean.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Speakers and Leaders Hour. I'm Dave Wilkins, your host, and this is the program that comes into your home once a month, first Tuesdays from 7 to 8 p.m., and we're here live in the Allen County Public Library, and we're here to talk about and demonstrate Toastmasters as well as the leadership with the American Institute of Parliamentarians. So the first half of our program this evening will be dedicated entirely to the Toastmaster organization. And it's a rather extensive organization, and you're going to hear more about its founding and its beginnings and also its structure. I'm very pleased to have with me here in the studio this evening two of the leaders of the Toastmaster clubs here in the Fort Wayne area, an area we call Division B. The first person I'd like to introduce is Mr. Bob Norris. And Bob is here this evening, and he is the Lieutenant Governor of Marketing for District 11, of which we are all a part. And Bob will be talking a little later in the program about the various aspects of the Toastmaster organization from the division upward. And the next man I'd like to introduce is a personal friend of mine, a member of the Toastmaster Club I belong to just almost seems like forever, the Anthony Wayne Toastmasters. And that gentleman's name is Tom Haller. And he is currently serving this year as the Area 24 Governor. And Tom, thank you so much for being here this evening. It's great to have you both as part of this Toastmaster parliamentary experience.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I want to now go ahead and introduce Tom. And let me tell you, as I just said a moment ago, he is from the Anthony Wayne Toastmasters, serving as the club president. He's also a distinguished Toastmaster. He might tell you about that later on. He is serving, as I did mention, the Area 24 Governor, and he has served as other club officers. Let's welcome at this time Mr. Tom Haller.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I welcome all of you out there in TV land. Hope you enjoy this show. I know we very much enjoy bringing these shows to you. I've been asked to speak about the officers at the club and area level. As Mr. Wilkins kindly pointed out, I am president of the Anthony Wayne Toastmasters, Club 521. And the president is certainly not the hardest job. Some people feel it's the easiest job. But the fact of the matter is, I do have oversight responsibility for the club. I need to be chief cheerleader. I generally, when I'm there, which is most of the time, conduct the business meetings, and I have a responsibility to see that everyone else performs their tasks. Immediately underneath me, by leadership, in the leadership context, is the Vice President of Education. She or he could easily be either one, just as all the officers could be. Has a very large job. In the case of Anthony Wayne, this is Bernice Wilkins, Dave's better half, and she has this very substantial responsibility of seeing that everybody gets a fair turn to speak, of making up the agendas, sending in for awards, and quite a few other things. It's a very time-consuming task. We then have the vice presidents of membership, public relations. I think these are fairly obvious. One looks over the members, sees that everything's all right, with them, and public relations tries to keep the Toastmaster and the club name before the public. Those two jobs are sometimes held by the same person. Then you have a very important, very delicate job, that of treasurer. I was a treasurer once. Suffice it to say, the club survived. It was close, very close. Some people are just not intended to handle money. So that would be me. But it's a very important job. Not only do they handle money, they have to mail it in electronically nowadays, most generally. They have to fill out government forms. We are a highly controlled society, and certainly the treasurer is one of the most tightly controlled. We have secretaries then. Sometimes some clubs will have a secretary, treasurer combined. The secretary likewise has a very time-consuming, very important job. She takes care of the minutes. The minutes are very important. They need to be saved pretty much forever. Now with the electronic media, that will probably become easier as they're put onto the computer, but until that happens, they have to be saved in paper form. She also has to very carefully keep track of any motions that are made so that we know exactly what we're voting on. The secretary and the president should be two separate people. It's not a very good idea when you question whether the president's right that he looks in his own notes and say, here, yep, I was right all along. Just not really the proper way to do it, whether it's a Toastmaster club or any other. Now, the last officer, so to speak, by no means the least, as in some ways the hardest task, certainly the most physical task, depending on circumstances, is the sergeant at arms. Now, this is not as militant as it might sound, but he does have the responsibility to prepare the room. Sometimes the room is already prepared. Sometimes it takes a good deal of effort to get it all changed around the way you want it and put back when you're done with it. Certainly, he would have people help him. If something happens to your regular meeting spot, it's his primary responsibility to find a new meeting spot. He also has responsibilities for welcoming guests when they come in. All good clubs should have a guest book where they can sign in, and certainly many other people should participate in making the guests feel welcome, but it is the particular responsibility of the sergeant at arms. Now, not really a club officer, but with certain responsibilities, is the previous club president. By the way, the club president is the only one of those that should not be repeated. I said should not because sometimes reality rears its ugly face, and it does happen, but it is contrary to Toastmaster guidelines. So these are the basic officers. There's no officer ferry that comes out of Southern California to provide us with officers. Part of the Toastmaster experience is to learn leadership, to learn how to be good, effective leaders. To that end, there is all kinds of written information nowadays on the internet. You can become self-trained to any extent that you want. You can devote as much time and energy to finding out as you care to. Also, twice a year, we have training on a district or divisional or area level where people are trained so that they know how to do their tasks. There's let's say within Toastmasters, there's a certain encouragement, penalties for failure to be trained. Some clubs choose not to be trained, some individuals do. Life goes on, but it's much better to be trained. And there are rewards for doing this in addition to knowledge. Above the above the club level, there is the area. That is the next grouping, so to speak. Usually there are 4 to 6 clubs within the area. I am an area governor. I have Area 24. I have 6 clubs, more or less. Now, one club is chosen to fold. That is a very significant black spot on my efforts, but be that as it may. There are 3 area governors in Division B, Fred Horn,
Crystal Heffley.
Crystal Heffley, thank you, know her quite well, known her for many years, and myself. We have a lot of responsibility and absolutely no authority whatsoever. It's an interesting combination, but after all, everybody is a volunteer. It's pretty hard to make any of us do anything we don't really want to. It's, as was mentioned earlier, kind of a situation sometimes of herding cats. But whether it's a difficult or an easy situation, all we can do is encourage the clubs to do those things which will make them better clubs and will make their individual participants, their individual members, happier, better Toastmasters. We can educate, we can advise, we can cajole, we can beg, we can cry, but in the end, there's nothing for it but to show them the best way to go and let them do that. We are required as area governors to visit the clubs at least twice a year. We have reports that we need to do, and no money for this, but that's part of the joy of being a volunteer organization. It is very rewarding. I think it's very helpful to many people in the community, in the Toastmaster community, and I think it's worthwhile. If those of us who are retired and can still get around aren't going to do it, then who would do it? Well, actually, my other two area governors are still working, much younger than I am, very busy, and they're finding time to do it. So I really, really appreciate their efforts. Some areas, not my area, some areas, perhaps out west, perhaps somewhere where their population's a little larger of Toastmasters, the area will have its own secretary, its own organization. We really haven't done that yet. We're still working on that. We do have a divisional marketing team, which is new for this area, but I will let Bob Norris explain that. Bob Norris is going to follow me. He will take us to new heights of Toastmastering where us common people are not familiar and don't know. Did you have a question?
Tom, I have a couple questions, yes. I thought that there were contests in the Toastmaster structure. Can you talk at all about the contests?
I could indeed. Contests are an important part of the Toastmaster experience. First, the club will have a contest. Sometimes a club doesn't have a contest, they just appoint anyone, but in an ideal world, there would be a contest. The winner of this contest would go on then to the area. I, as an area governor, would typically be in charge of this. We have combined our areas, since we are somewhat small in numbers. We have combined some of our areas and do it all at once, but nonetheless, as an area governor, I have the oversight responsibility for that. And then the winners of the area contests go on up to the divisional contests. And from there, depending on the contest, you may go on and become world famous as a top-notch public speaker. It is something that can be quite lucrative. Obviously, only one every year or so falls in that category, but it can be very, very rewarding. It's also very rewarding to the individuals who participate. They learn a lot. They learn. It's easy when you're in a particular club and even if it's a good sized club like Anthony Wayne, you becomes kind of comfortable after a while. I know one of our participants spoke at the area level, and he was very nervous, and he had not been nervous at all at the club. Spoke many times, done very well. I said, what's the problem here? This is actually a smaller group you're speaking in front of now than at the club many times. He said, yeah, but Tom, they're not the same people. And he got over that. He has continued to enter contests and does very well. Did I answer your question adequately? Yeah. Did you have other questions?
Can you address how Toastmasters helps people overcome their fear of public speaking?
Yes, I'd be happy to address that. I address anything, just whether it's a good answer or not, it's up for you to decide. We do it by practice. It's one of those things that there's really no other way to approach it. You have to do it by practice. Toastmasters has the major advantage of having a whole room full of people, and here I'm stealing shamelessly from the late Bill Cartwright. There's nowhere else on earth, generally speaking, that you have a whole room full of people who have nothing other on their minds other than helping you become better. Typically, when you give a speech, you will have someone who evaluates you. If you're at all new to the game and the club's running properly, you will have a mentor, which will also help you. There will be various other people who will watch things like your grammar. And yeah, we have people all the time come from some of the colleges for a single meeting. They have to attend and write a paper on it. That's nice. We love to have these people. We encourage them to come. If anybody believes that you can learn speaking over the internet or by coming and watching someone else do it one time, well, you've just got to be kidding yourself, if nobody else. All you can do with this is practice, practice, practice. We have people there who will help you, who will guide you. We have manuals, we have information for you. We can make it happen. I once heard a college professor say that there were two kinds of speaking programs in colleges. Those based very closely on the Toastmaster method and those that were worthless. And I firmly believe that to be the case.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
You're quite welcome. So and certainly this is another area where, as area governor, I have the responsibility for these contests. I also have the kind of a general oversight responsibility to see that all the people who join Toastmasters are, getting properly treated, that they're welcomed, that they have, opportunity to advance and give their speech.
Tom, we have a phone call there.
We have a phone call. Yes, please. I've heard that silence is deadly on a TV show, but I also think I'm supposed to be waiting for a phone call. So I'm not quite sure what to do here, whether to jump or set. Anyway, I guess I will keep talking. If you need to, cut me off in mid-sentence. We do love to have people call in. We really appreciate that. The number is 422-3902. That's right here in the downtown library in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm not getting anybody. Hello?
Turn your TV down.
Hello.
Tell her to turn your TV down.
Yeah, maybe if
Yes, I have a question for the speaker.
please.
A friend of mine went to a Toastmaster meeting and said they were all such terrific speakers it scared her out. Do you have a special group or something just for beginners?
There are various things that could be done. First place, if he would come and practice a couple times, he would lose this fear and this concern. There are various things which can be done for new people. There are various programs. These are kind of a catch as catch can, but we do have programs aimed just for this. We have
the Speechcraft.
Yeah, Speechcraft particularly. Sometimes we occasionally go into schools. They have what they call gavel clubs for other groups that wouldn't be, quite up to a regular Toastmaster meeting for a number of reasons. But Speechcraft would probably be the single most direct answer to your question. Was there anything else?
Well, I just wondered, is everybody there all that good, really? Do they?
Well, they're certainly not all that good the first
The
time
members,
they
are
speak.
they all just real great?
No, they're not. We're not all that real great. I would say that probably he came on an extraordinary night. We are in all stages of development. Most of those who are really good now were really poor to start with. I don't remember my early days, but I'm sure that it was left a lot to be desired, and my evaluator had to choose very carefully which of my many flaws I needed to work on first. But that is the way the program works. You give it your best shot with your icebreaker. You're guided one by one to eliminate your flaws and drawbacks, and you become a great speaker. Anybody who is intimidated by the fact that all the speakers were good really shouldn't be, because they won't all be that good every night. I can assure you that. Periodically, they even let me speak. I try to keep it so nobody's, too worried. They can always think, well, I did better.
Well, maybe
than
there's hope for me.
I think we've got a ringer here on the phone, and I think there's a great deal of hope for you. Absolutely. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the call in. I believe at this time I will turn control over to Bob Norris. He is our Lieutenant Governor of Marketing. He's past District B Division Governor. He's past Area Governor. And he not only has a past, but he has a future ahead of him. So help me welcome him as he sees us through the higher realms of Toastmaster leadership. Bob.
Thank you, Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom has given you a great overview of how we operate at the club area and at the area. But Toastmasters is an international organization with over 270,000 members with 13,000 clubs in over 116 countries. So how do we keep everything running on an even keel? How do we set it up so that if you visit a club in California, one in New York, Minnesota, Texas, you are going to find consistency. Or you go to another country, you're going to find consistency. Because Toastmasters is broken up into 88 different districts, and each district has consistency. There's a number of different officers that are in each district. We start out with the area governor, as Tom has explained to you, and depending on the part of the state, for instance, Indiana is part of District 11. District 11 takes in all of Indiana and the northwestern 40 counties of Kentucky. So anywhere you go in Indiana, you'll find Toastmasters in different areas. We actually have 31 areas in District 11, kind of reminiscent of the 31 flavors of ice cream. And we have then, from there, we build to what we call divisions. There are 7 divisions in Indiana, and as Thomas mentioned, Division B is our local division. Each division will have a number of different areas, typically between 3 to 4 to 5, possibly even 6 divisions. These are set up in a way to help everyone. As Tom mentioned, and as a recap, the area governor is basically the liaison for the clubs. When we set up clubs and get clubs going, we don't want the people to think they're an island out there by themselves. And if they look around, who's there if they have questions? Who's there if they need help? The area governor is the front line for their help. He or she typically visits each club at least twice a year to make sure that they have Toastmaster consistency, brand consistency, and that they're doing okay. We field questions for them. Sometimes in organizations, the people at the bottom feel like they can't talk to the people at the top. Well, the good news is with Toastmasters, the members are actually at the top. The district leaders, like myself, are what I consider just a necessary evil to help them become better and to grow. Now, some of my colleagues might poo-poo me for saying evil, but we are there to service them. They're not there as members to service us. Each division, as we noted, will have several areas. The division governor basically is a helper, a leader, a supervisor for the area governors. Their job is to help lead the area governors being successful, help them make their clubs distinguished, help their clubs stand out among the other clubs in other areas, and to help the division grow. One of the key roles, I think, which doesn't get a lot of kudos, is the division or the district secretary. As Tom mentioned what the secretary does at the club level, the district secretary does the basic same thing at the district level. About every other month, we have a district executive council meeting. This is where everyone will gather in the Indianapolis area, and we'll have a several hours meeting to check what's going on. And the district secretary takes care of the minutes, publishes minutes, keeps track of what we do at business meetings, keeps us so that if something does come up and we need to have something to vote on, is it money or other issues, or how we're going to change our procedures, she or he keeps the legal things going as the secretary. And of course we have, as Tom said, the treasurer, which is one that I would not want to be. I like to spend money, but I don't like to necessarily keep track of it. So I will go with someone else to have them do that. Then we have our public relations officer, our PRO as we call them. This is a point person for getting the word out in the district. They are an appointed position as the secretary and the treasurer. A big difference is everyone else at the division, and the area governor is also appointed. The division governor and the next officials have to be elected by their peers. That's a big difference. We move up to the third position, which I currently have, is the Lieutenant Governor of Marketing. It is my job as Lieutenant Governor of Marketing to help find ways to retain membership, because sometimes people leave through no concern of their own. They may get downsized. They might pass away like our good friend Bill Cartwright, or they might get a job in another state or another country. So our job is to retain who we can, to find new people to join, and to add clubs, because being part of the club experience is what led all of us to be here today. The club experience is basically an extended family. And when we become crazy enough to move up the ranks, to volunteer even more, it's because we love what we're doing. We look for new markets as the marketing persons too. Next up, we approach the Lieutenant Governor of Education and Training. This person is number 2 in the district. They are responsible for putting together training for all of the area governors, division governors, and the other officials of the state. They are also responsible for making sure that the conferences that we have go well, finding speakers, finding leaders to participate in those, and twice a year we do something called Toastmasters Leadership International, which we will have a big conference for education and for training. This is a very, very complicated job, which leads to the number 1 position in the state, which is the district governor. This basically is the CEO of District 11, or the other districts. They are the head person, the point person, but yet they aren't really a manager. They maintain the main role of being a leader. They do have to make sure certain leadership functions and often managerial functions are properly done, such as the day-to-day operations, finances, and human resources. They are the ones that are out there for all of us at the top, trying their very best to make sure District 11 achieves its goals of becoming distinguished, of building clubs, of adding members, of providing the optimal education and training to all of its members. Now I talked a little bit about the leadership training, and it is a critical part of making sure that everything is covered with the state, with any district, with any state. Now some districts are bigger and they may be split up in states. California may have 2 or 3. Florida may have 2 or 3. It depends on the geographic area and the number of people. But each and every district strives their very best to provide the optimal training and education. Because again, we're all volunteers. We're not paid. If we were, you couldn't afford us. But we come in, we devote our time because we know the reward for what we do is not in money. It is because of what we see it doing for other people, how it helps. It helps us too because we grow. We become more and more experienced with networking. We become more confident as we become more involved with other people. We become more and more involved with training and education. And in the process, just like speaking, as we're learning to speak, we also learn to evaluate. And as we learn to evaluate, we learn to become better speakers. So this is the kind of long and short of it for the district and what we do for District 11. And as I said, there's 88 districts in the world, and Toastmasters is all over the world. Each one is basically the same, but just like every club, the difference is the flavor of the people involved. And if anyone has any questions, I will take them at this moment.
Yeah, I do. Bob, how long have you belonged to Toastmasters? And what or who brought you to your first meeting?
Well, thank you, Dave. I joined Toastmasters in the summer of 2007. A good Toastmaster and friend of mine, I met at one of my networking meetings. And what I did at the networking meeting was facilitate the group, and I still do, on Fridays. He told me afterwards, he said, well, you're pretty good. He said, why don't you come to my Toastmasters meeting? Meet some other great people like you have here. Hone your skills some more. Well, I thought at first, okay, I don't know. And then I decided, okay, I'll go and see what this is all about. And I basically thought this is wonderful because I'd been through speech classes, I've been through presentations, and I was critiqued or criticized. And in the process, you feel small when you're criticized. But I was evaluated, which meant they told me what I did well, and they told me what I did for improvement. And I can say then I was like putting a fish in water. Okay. Tom.
Yes. Would you address what the division governor does? I think we kind of skipped her between us.
I may have briefly touched on it. The division governor's job is to lead and support the division through the supervision and support of the area governors. That's right out of the Toastmasters manual, by the way. They're basically a leadership role, I will say a mentor for the area governors. Because typically what happens is our people that are area governors will move up to the division governorship role. So they know a lot of what they've run into with concerns, with stumbling blocks, with issues, and with things that are good. So when they become a division governor, they oversee with their area governors, okay, this is what I learned, what are you learning, what do you need help with? So I see them again as another mentor and a leader to help the area governors become better.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Okay.
Do you want to go ahead and take us into the break, and we'll start with parliamentary?
We can, if we are ready.
Thank you very much. And now for our next speaker,
Thank you, sir.
Stanley Lichner.
Nomine Padre et Filii Spiritui Sancti.
Speaking in public doesn't have to be a death sentence. At Toastmasters, we can help you overcome your fears.
I'd like to begin tonight with a little joke. This guy, he's a farmer, and he says, "Hey, hello, sorry." But seriously, folks,
Speaking in public is no joke.
farmer says, doctor says, chicken says,
For help, call Toastmasters, the public speaking support group.
the chicken.
All the education in the world won't help you get ahead in life if you can't express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.
What future do you envision for yourself? What dreams do you have? If you want your dreams to come true, you must have confidence in yourself and your abilities. A Toastmasters Club can help you build that confidence. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters shows you how to express yourself clearly and effectively. Make your dreams a reality. Join a Toastmasters Club.
Hello, and welcome back to the second half of the Speakers and Leaders Hour. We're going to move from Toastmasters now to parliamentary procedure. And there's really quite a crossover between the two organizations. The reason being is that the founder of our Toastmaster organization very much believed that parliamentary procedure, in fact, Robert's Rules of Order, was the way to go. So in the early 1950s, our founder, Dr. Smedley, wrote the biography of Henry Robert, the man who wrote this wonderful little book, Robert's Rules of Order. We are speaking under the auspices of both banners this evening. You see the Toastmaster banner over behind me. Ah, yes, that does it every time. And then on the other side is the American Institute of Parliamentarians banner. And so we are here for representing both organizations. And there is a brand new edition of Robert's Rules of Order. This is the hard copy. It's available online. It's something like 716 pages. So if you're the president of a club, you need to run out and purchase a copy of this book and then read it cover to cover. Right. That isn't going to happen In fact, I have heard from other people that that book is the second most popular book bought, but not read, right after the Bible. So what do we do to help people learn parliamentary procedure? Well, we have a club here in Fort Wayne. I'd like to promote that at this time, and it's the American Institute of Parliamentarians, chapter number 33, and we meet right here in the Allen County Library on the third Monday of the month, just down the Grand Hall in the Globe Room. We meet from 6:30 to 8. We have parliamentary lectures, study questions, and then the ever important and most valuable practice session. That is to say, we stand in front of a lectern and practice handling main motions so that we get the wording right, because that's where you get all tripped up, is if you don't use the right words at the right time. I had just found out this evening that a young lady that I know has become elected to chairmanship of a rather prestigious organization. So the balance of this evening, the last half hour, we're going to dedicate to Miss Elizabeth Lord. And this is for you, Elizabeth. And so these are things you should do or ought to do when you're going to preside. The most important thing to do is start on time. Now that's something you could just gloss right over. Start on time, okay, big deal. But it really is a big deal, because you see all of those people sitting out there in the audience that are ready to start on time. When you say, well, let's wait and see if Bill shows up, or Mary isn't here yet. Well, I need to take a quick break before we start the proceedings. You have just told all those people that are waiting in your audience that they're not important, that what you want to do is way more important. You want to wait for someone, you want to take a personal moment, whatever. That's not good. You are the leader of all of those people, and if you say you're going to start at 7 o'clock, you really ought to start at 7 o'clock. And the second most important thing to do is make sure that there is a secretary there. I know, Tom, you touched on that you can't have a presiding officer and a secretary in the same person. Now, you really need someone to write down what you did. So start on time and make sure you have a secretary. Now, this is something you may not have thought about, and maybe your organization does or does not do it. Have an agenda for yourself, all of your officers, and every member of the audience. Now, you might think that's a waste of paper, a waste of time, and something you're not going to bother doing. But I can assure you that if you use an agenda, everything in your meeting will speed up. You will get your meeting done in half the time with less misunderstanding and less confusion and upsetness. So an agenda is very important. I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. But remember, you have the agenda, you adopt the agenda, and then you follow it. And now this is kind of hard to do, after all. If you've been elected to an organization, maybe half of your friends, more than half of your friends, are part of the group that elected you. But do remember that if you are the president, you're the president of all of these people. So you've got to be impartial. And keep the meeting moving. Don't dally. If you don't know what to do, well, do something, but don't just stand there and hum and haw. And as leader, you should stand while conducting business. Now, it gets to be kind of a pain after a while, but if you want to sit during a secretary's report or the treasurer's minutes, or somebody is presenting a motion, that would be fine to sit. But when you are conducting business, you need to stand. There are several things that you need to have, or ought to have. You should have a lectern, much like I have right here in front of me. It holds your paperwork. It shows you to be prepared and ready to go. That's a good, solid lectern. You ought to have a gavel. And I understand Our Lady Elizabeth just received a gavel because of her chairmanship. So if you have a gavel, use it. Use it wisely. And Robert's book says, with restraint. None of this boom, 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 like Sam Rayburn did in the House of Representatives. He used to hit the gavel so hard the head would fly off. If you have to use the gavel that hard to get your group's attention, perhaps you're in the wrong business. You maybe not be cut out to be a leader. You need to just simply tap the gavel once with a little bit of authority and call the meeting to order. Some people do, and I'm one of them. When the minutes are approved, you just tap the gavel, and that sort of like seals it, I guess. You might remember that. Something else you might want to have, ought to have, in fact, and ought to have read is the copy of your bylaws. Because after all, that's the nuts and bolts that hold your organization together. And then you should have a copy of your parliamentary authority. Now, there are many copies, or many authorities. There's Alice Sturgis, there's Demeter, there's Riddick, but by and large, the majority of people are still going to use Robert's Rules of Order. So you should have a copy of it and use it as a reference. Now, the things you need to know is you need to know how to maintain order. If your people are acting really unruly, you do need to use your gavel to call them back to order. And it would be helpful to know as much parliamentary procedure as everybody in your audience. And you also have to know how to handle a main motion. We'll get into that just a little bit later. Now, these are some things that you need to keep in mind. So you're the leader, act like it. If you're going to go to a meeting, dress appropriately. Don't be in shorts and sandals and expect to get any kind of authority or recognition. Remember, there are parliamentary phrases that you want to use. The meeting is called to order. The minutes are approved as read. May we have the treasurer's report. You know, those all sound stuffy. And they are stuffy. But they're the only words that really and truly work. And I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I have consistently asked people and challenged them to come up with a better set of words to use when conducting a business meeting. And so far, it hasn't happened. When you use these words, your business on track, and your members will recognize those words, not the fact that because you're saying them, it doesn't make you stuffy, it just makes those words stuffy. And you won't get off track. Now, this is something important. There are some phrases that you need to learn, like, oops, I made a mistake. Bear with me a moment. Let me try to do that over. Those phrases will help you and go a long way towards endearing you to your audience. It'd be nice if you were perfect, but this is not a perfect world. So if you make a mistake, admit it as soon as you realize it's been made. Do everything you can to correct it, and then move on. Don't dwell on it. And do remember that a motion or a discussion without a motion on the floor will result in very long debate and no real action taken. So don't allow discussion without a motion to the effect of whatever that discussion is going on. So these are some of the things that you want to keep in mind if you're going to preside. Mostly what it is simple common sense, peppered with a few words and phrases that will make it easier for you to help your group lead. And as you know, as the leader, you're not there to pound your opinion into people's minds. You're there to find out what the will of the majority is, and then see that that is implemented. That is the total reason for having a president, is to do the will of the majority. So those are some things to do when you're going to preside. Now, I'd like to talk about a few things that you ought to know, and in fact, I'm going to be doing a workshop at the fall conference here in Fort Wayne at the guest house out on Washington Center Road, and that's on the 20th of October at 11 o'clock in the morning if you want to come to my workshop. There are multiple kinds of voting, and different methods have different reasons for being and different ways of using them. Now, the most common and the most efficient and the easiest way to vote is the consent vote. If you've had a group of people here talking about a picnic, and everyone just seems to think that that's just a hunky-dory idea, after you've heard enough discussion, you say to the group, it sounds to me like we all want to go to this picnic on the 23rd. So if there's no objection, we will have the picnic on the 23rd. That is a completed motion. You have given them the chance to object. No one objected. Everyone agreed. And now you're going to go and have that picnic without going through the formal motion of having a motion, a second, a discussion, and then voting. That is the easiest, most efficient way of voting. In fact, there is such a thing as called a consent agenda. If you have a lot of items on your agenda, and you know many of them are going to pass without discussion, you might start down your agenda, you know. Discuss car wash. Anybody want to talk about it? No, we'll put it on the consent agenda. Okay, we're going to have a meeting on the 30th. Anybody want to talk about it? Nope, we'll put that on the consent agenda. When all these items are on the consent agenda and no one wants to talk about them, that means that you can pass them all at one fell swoop because of, if no one objects, we will pass all of these motions on the consent agenda. And now then, moving on, there is something called the voice vote. Viva voce, if you want to speak Latin or sound very educated. Viva voce, voice vote. How do you accomplish that? Well, you direct the vote and you ask your audience to respond. You say, all of those in favor say aye. Thank you. All those opposed say no. We recommend that you do not say all those opposed say nay. We also recommend that you don't say all of those opposed same sign. These things can get you in trouble. Now, why would same sign get you in trouble? Well, let's examine it. If you have just said all those in favor say aye, all those opposed same sign, aye, well, which ayes have it? The ayes that are for it or the ayes that are against it? You know, so don't use same sign. Okay. Then, of course, if the voice vote is not sufficient enough, and perhaps you need a 2/3 vote in the affirmative, you would call for a visual vote. Now, how do you do that? Well, you ask for all those in favor to raise your hand. Thank you. All of those opposed to raise your hand. Thank you. Those are then counted and the results are given. And if it's the 2/3 vote, and that's usually the reason for a visual vote, it would be announced that we'd had a 2/3 vote. A counted vote. That is a vote where the sergeant at arms passes out ballots and everybody writes on there what they want, and then the votes are counted and so on. And finally, last but not least, is the roll call vote. And that is, in fact, used mostly by, I think, city council or government agencies where they call out the ambassador from Transylvania or the president of so-and-so, and then you announce your vote at that time. That's the roll call vote. So most of those votes are not ones that you would often use. You would probably use consent, voice, and maybe even the visual vote. But let's turn now to the agenda. And as I said a little earlier, the agenda is something that is very important, and it is important because it helps keep your meeting moving, avoiding confusion. It keeps everybody on the same page at the same time and knows when each item is going to be talked about. Now these are, I'm going to give a list here, and these are the items that are on the agenda as listed in Robert's Rules. There's the call to order, then opening ceremony, if there is such thing, introductions perhaps of guests, dignitaries. At that time you then adopt the agenda. You adopt the agenda, by the way, with a majority vote. Once adopted, it can only be changed by a 2/3 vote in the affirmative. So it's not cast in stone, but it is a little difficult to change it. Following the adoption of the agenda, you go into your secretary's report, your financial report, officer reports, committee reports, unfinished business, new business. We suggest that you don't say old business. You might offend some of the senior members of your organization. So adjust the word just by saying unfinished. That means to say it's continued over from last month. Announcements, breaks, program, and then finally adjourn. That is the agenda that Robert suggests. Remember to stick to the agenda. Remember to be sure to have a copy for every single person in your audience. They'll appreciate it. They'll look to you for leadership because after all you took the time to put it together. And this is important too, and while it is the president's agenda, it is prepared and can be prepared by any officer or the secretary, but prepare it from the perspective that the president is going to use it as his guideline. Now, this is something important. On a nice wide 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, there is plenty of room after you have listed your element of the agenda. It might say discussion per motion. On the far right of that side, all you have to do is put a little block that says discussion limited to 3 minutes. That will keep your long-winded members from going off into some tirade. And this is a hint. For some reason, when people see things in print, they believe them. So if it says 3 minutes is debate time, they'll do that in 3 minutes. So that's something to keep in mind. Remember, the agenda is a roadmap. You wouldn't start out to go from here to Timbuktu without some kind of a map. So use the agenda as something that is your personal guide and makes your meetings more efficient. Okay, I have talked about voting. I have talked about the agenda. Now I'd like to talk about the steps in the main motion. And this is where people can get tripped up. The main motion begins, there are actually 6 elements. The first element is a recognized member will stand up and say, Mr. Jones, or Mr. President, my name is Bill Jones, and I move that we pave the front driveway. Well, that's a valid motion, and at this time it would require a second. Now, the chair has some power here. The chair can say, for lack of a second, that motion dies. Or if the chair thinks it's a pretty good motion, we'll say, do I hear a second to that motion? Oftentimes that will simply bring the second around. Once the motion has been made and seconded, sometimes one or more people will call out second. It's certainly not necessary to call out third, fourth, and there are no such things as fifths in a business meeting. In any case, once it has been moved and seconded, the chair then restates the motion. And the restating of the motion is a mystical movement. It takes the motion from the maker, the chair has the motion now, and by restating it, he is giving it to the audience at large. When saying, it's been moved and seconded that we now pave the driveway. Is there further discussion? A good chairman will then turn to the person that made the motion and say, Bill Jones, you made that motion. Do you want to speak to it? If you don't, that's perfectly fine. Does someone else wish to speak to this motion? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against this motion? The debate will go for and against, as long as necessary, with the chair continuously saying, are you ready to vote? Is there any further discussion? Is there anything we haven't heard yet on this issue? If you're ready to vote, we will vote now. Take just a few second pause when you say we will vote now. Hearing no further discussion, go immediately to the vote by saying all those in favor of paving the driveway say aye. All of those opposed say no. The chair then announces the result of the vote. The noes have it. The motion is defeated. We will not be paving the driveway. And immediately the chair will say, is there further new business? Now, if the motion has passed, the chair would say, the ayes have it, the motion has been passed, we will be paving the new driveway. And then again saying, is there further discussion? These are the elements of passing a main motion. And if you come to our club meetings on the third Monday, I promise you, you will get practice doing that and learning the exact words and phrases to say to do a very good job. Now, I would like to open this discussion up for my own personal benefit. Did I do anything or say anything that would be inconsistent with delivering a good workshop at the conference? That's what I want to know about. Yes, Bob?
Well, actually, I think you did very well, and I would like to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
I have attended meetings where someone made the motion and then all of a sudden people started talking about it. What happens when that happens?
Well, a good chairman will realize that that is an implied second. An implied second simply means that people already are talking about it without the chair having asked if there is any discussion. So that motion is a seconded motion and it becomes perfectly valid. Okay, thank you. Tom?
Yes, I had a comment in this day and age of political correctness. When you say that people have to stand, you are not implying that people who are wheelchair bound or otherwise handicapped would be incapable of conducting.
Well, obviously they can't say anything if they can't stand. I mean, you know they're going to have to stand up. No, I believe you're quite correct, Tom. I think that we take into our sensibilities everyone's needs and what they are, and also their limitations. But that's a very good point. Ideally, what they can do or should do is predicated on their health. Yeah, good point. Thank you. Did you have any comments about the delivery or anything I said that could be better at the conference? Yes?
How long is the workshop at the conference?
40 minutes.
40 minutes. I think what I saw for someone that doesn't use parliamentary procedure on a daily basis, what you gave tonight was a very good introduction. Answered some questions, brought them good things to think about. I made a few notes here, and I will suggest to a couple people in the district they go to your workshop.
Okay. Well, see, I've done this in 30 minutes because that's all the time I had. The remaining 20 minutes I'm going to use for practice session, which is what we like to do. Okay, I am down to the last minute. I need to say some quick thank you. Let me just get my little piece of paper here, my cheat sheet. I need to say thank you to Elizabeth Lord. And Elizabeth, congratulations for being elected to chairmanship. Also, we have a new camera operator, Dan Deedy. And Dan, thank you for doing a yeoman's job tonight. I appreciate that. Paul Brand is our old faithful, and he has just been here forever, and we just really, really appreciate everything he does. Again, reintroducing from the Bob Lyman Toastmaster Club, Bob Norris, the Lieutenant Governor of Marketing for District 11. Thank you, Bob, for being here.
Thank you, Dave.
And my friend Tom Haller from the Anthony Wayne Toastmasters, as well as the Advanced Communicators Toastmasters. So these are all the people that have helped make this show possible, along with Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, and of course you people who are watching out there. And again, thank you for the caller we had this evening. We appreciate that. Remember, this is Toastmasters Parliamentary Procedure, and we are here and we are done. Till next month, God bless and goodbye.